I'm Agent Morris with the NSA.
There is something real here.
Do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
And where?
I know the exact locations, and those locations were provided to the Inspector General and some of which to the intelligence committees. I actually had the people with the first-hand knowledge provide a protected disclosure to the Inspector General. Biologics came to some of these recoveries. Yeah.
Those could represent exquisite new adversary technology.
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
The government is covering up some level of its knowledge and understanding about what some of those things are.
The Soul Foundation, which just announced a new initiative for UFO research and policy.
It's nuts, man. I mean, we're just small-town buds who saw a UFO in the woods. I mean, now we're hanging out with the government.
Wow. What floor were you guys on?
Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is another live edition of Anomaly-NOW, straight out of Austin, Texas. I am your host, Miles Lewis. This is the weekly live news media roundup for the 501c3 nonprofit Scientific Anomaly Institute, a.k.a. the Anomaly Archives. It is Wednesday, October 2nd, 2024. Hit like and subscribe and notification bells and all that good stuff. Spread the word. We're out there. It's a free show. Come on. Everybody get in the pool. Oh, well, this is always a fun time to do a reflection on what crazy news stories I've seen over the last few days or week since the last show. And in the midst of the world being ever crazier, it's just crazy. Whoa. See? Told you. It's crazy. So you can join our patreon.com/Anomaly Archives. And if you're at the Anomaly Academy Cadet tier, that means you get access to our monthly live online lecture series. This past month, September, we didn't do a live event, but I dug something out of the archives for our supporters, and you can check that out by going, we'll put the links, of course, into the show notes. And this past end of the month, I posted the 2014 lecture. This was actually one of the last, possibly second to last lecture done by my good friend Rob Briggs, who was a paranormal researcher, Bigfoot researcher, and a journalist. He was a journalist first and foremost, and longtime friendship with him started in about 2001, 2002. And we've gone ahead and posted some of the information for this Patreon over at the anomalyarchives.org website. And what I got out of the archives and dusted off and tweaked the audio for is this lecture that he gave in 2014, so 10 years ago. And sadly, Rob passed away later the next year in 2015. And I was honored to speak at his memorial here in Austin and to speak to his significance as a paranormal Bigfoot researcher. Of course, so many Bigfoot researchers are blood and gutters, just like nuts and bolters are the standard UFO paradigm. Anyway, it's almost a 2-hour lecture, and I really enjoyed reminiscing, listening back to that. If you go to the Patreon page for this or the Anomaly Archives page for it, you can hear about an 8 to 10 minute excerpt. And like I said, here is the post reproduced here on the Anomaly Archives website. He was the author of In the Big Thicket on the Trail of the Wild Man, which is how I came to know about him, published in 2001, I believe. And he was a contributor to the Weird Texas anthology. And right before his passing and in support of this lecture, or rather, this lecture in 2014 was having to do with his then recently published book on Bigfoot that he co-wrote with another author. Very interesting fellow. And, Rob helped the Anomaly Archives produce its first Ghost Lights mini conference in 2005. And actually this photograph here features West Texas Marfa Lights researcher Jim Bunnell. Behind him, barely visible, is good friend Renee Lewis. Sadly, she's passed. And then there's Rob Riggs and some other folks, myself in the background. And that is Paul Devereaux, the Earth Lights researcher. Nick Redfern was also a member of that entourage and part of the Ghost Lights mini conference. And then there's a picture of me imitating the Patty Walk, the Bigfoot from the Patterson-Gimlin film. And they're looking at the historic marker is Earth Lights researcher Paul Devereaux. Anyway, and there is a picture of Rob and Nick Redfern shortly before Rob's passing. But you can hear, like I said, the sample of that. And I'm going to actually go ahead and play a sample of this that I've uploaded for the show. It's a couple minutes long. So what in this clip that you're going to hear is a story I love to tell people about. And it was just after the new year in I think 2002. And Rob and I had gotten a call from fellow East Texas Bigfoot researcher Chester Moore about a recent sighting had by a family that was at a campsite only accessible by water on the Sabine River over there in East Texas. And it was so cold. And we met up with Chester and got on into his little boat that was named Swamp Devil. And this is chronicled in that Bigfoot book, Exploring the Myth and Discovering the Truth by Tom Burnett and Rob Riggs that I was mentioning. And I'm going to go ahead and play just this brief clip here.
So as we're getting on his boat, I looked down and Chester had the name of his boat was Swamp Devil. I said, Chester, so we got in and we were pulling out. And I said, Chester, I said, man, you've been holding out on me. You said, you've been holding out on me. You've been telling me that there's no way this could be anything but flesh and blood. And you're calling your boat the Swamp Devil? I said, what's that about? And so he just kind of smiled. And so we're pulling out and he's revving up his motor. I said, Chester, that's what the Cajuns call the Bigfoot. And he says, what? I said, they call him a diab, the devil. And he couldn't quite understand what I was saying because his motor was getting louder. So we're revving up, we're going out in the channel. And he says, what? I said, they call him diab, the devil. And I was practically yelling it out at that time. And his motor cut out, went dead right there. I swear to God. And I looked at Chester. I said, Chester, do you realize what just happened? I said, I mentioned the word devil, and your motor goes out. He says, I can't believe it. He said, I've never had any problem with this motor. He said, I checked it this morning. There's nothing wrong with it. Well, his motor had not only gone out, it froze. He couldn't account for it. So we had some paddles with us. And since I was an old man, I got to supervise Smiles and Chester to paddle us back to the nearest sandbar where we called his buddy for help. Well, his buddy shows up, and his name was Bubba. And Bubba shows up, and he picks us up. We load all of our gear, and he's getting ready to take us out to the camp. And his motor, he couldn't get his motor to start. It just quit working. And I said, man, I'm sorry about that. I said, let me see what I can do. So I got out of Chester's boat. I went over to the other Bubba's boat, and I did some little stupid thing. I said, "Okay, it should work now." And he cranked it right up. But that was a bizarre experience because it was too coincidental to be a coincidence, in my opinion.
Do you have anybody there named Brudeau?
Man, we had Chester's dad is a grade 8, what they call a grade 8 sandwich back home. Good people, but I wouldn't let Chester get away with that. I said, Chester, a Rougarou knocked this motor out, and you know it. And I said, I don't mind telling you, when that motor went out, I started looking around. And we got out there, and that's when we found the tracks. And whoever had been there, remember this, Smiles? Whoever had been there the night before had left suddenly and left all kinds of, there's some camping gear or something that they abandoned. Somebody left in a hurry.
Camping gear, kids' toys, I think, and shotgun shells in every direction.
Yeah. Something showed up and scared these people. They obviously responded with gunfire, and they left post-haste.
Were they emptied
Yes.
shotgun shells?
Yes.
And that was in an area literally on the Sabine River, right across the river from Louisiana. So that led me to think that there was some substance to the Rougarou legends.
Yeah, so if you want to hear the whole lecture, you can go to patreon.com/Anomaly Archives or the link that I'll post on the website. It's about almost a 2-hour lecture by Rob Riggs, one of his last. Love that man. Miss him dearly. And so we have the monthly lectures that you can find out more about. All right, so tons of stuff. I'm going to whiz through here on our Flipboard. There's a wealth of strange and interesting news items that we'll be covering. Coming up, October 23rd for this month's Anomaly Academy lecture is good friend Greg Bishop. He's going to be presenting on Can Hard Data and Materialism Solve the UFO Enigma? That's going to be Wednesday, October 23rd. Obviously, that'll be in place of our weekly live Anomaly-NOW show, but I'm really looking forward to that lecture. Always good to hear Greg Bishop's thoughts on the subject of UFOs. Now, I also recently acquired this wonderful Welcome UFO People Volume 1 comic art anthology here. Victor, thank you. And it's, for those who don't recognize that logo, the style of this is very much in the style of the old FSR Flying Saucer Review, the British publication. But this has got just some great artwork and very colorful, high glossy pages, just a lot of fun stuff here. And that is available over at welcomeufopeople.bigcartel.com. And I just got that in the mail recently. I also got my latest copy of the Austin Seance magazine. So that's cool too, with a cover article there. Okay. Moving right along. So, lots of UFO news. Danny Sheehan's New Paradigm Institute has put out this newsletter just in the last day or so. And it starts by giving some new leads that I wasn't aware of in a time when the skies still deliver more questions than answers. The movement for UAP disclosure has never felt more urgent. This week, we're diving into key developments that could reshape our understanding of non-human intelligence and the technology it may have left behind while visiting Earth. From the ongoing fight for the UAP Disclosure Act in Washington to Harold Malmgren's groundbreaking claims about recovered NHI tech, we're connecting the various dots. So there is a link here to something from Matt Laslo, who has been doing his Ask a Poll UAP reporting, and there's more on that over here at askapoll.com. Senator Mike Rounds, quote, negotiations continue on the Schumer UAPDA in the NDAA. And in fact, there is new audio, very brief, that Matt Laslo has garnered, and I'll see if I can put that on here right now.
And now, here's our latest Ask a Poll exclusive from your U.S. Capitol. When you work out, what happened to your amendment with Schumer and the NDAA?
You mean the NDAA's not out yet?
Yeah, but we're hearing now it's been gutted again. See, it's still alive. Negotiations are.
I have not been told that there is, let me put it this way up there. It's not out yet.
Because now the House, they just announced they're leaving town tomorrow and not coming back through November yet. So, right, we're going to deal with that in a lame duck.
Yes.
So that's interesting. Negotiations are still alive.
Negotiations continue.
All right. And so, yes, thank you, Matt, for asking those questions. And there is also news that it looks like November 13th, I think, is going to be the new hearing, and that former Navy Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet is going to be one of the people. Supposedly there's going to be other witnesses, and that they're trying to get like full-on people who've actually seen things, quote unquote. We shall see. So what else is going on? There's this news. So also in that same newsletter, I'm jumping all over the wrong. Here we go. Okay. So in that same newsletter was mention of this release of the Canadian, one of the shoot downs from last year. CTVnews.ca reports image released of mysterious object shot down over Yukon in 2023. And what's described as a cylinder looks more like a horseshoe. And they're saying that they've had this image since right after the shoot down, and that they didn't want to release it, that though it was approved for release, and so it's just been languishing all that time, but they didn't want to release it because they thought it would cause more confusion than elucidate anything. And that certainly seems to be the case. There doesn't seem to, the shape of this object, the look of it just doesn't look like a balloon. It's circular, but then there's that chunk cut out of it. Like I said, it looks like a horseshoe almost, but still more questions than answers here. Why was the image never released? Quote, the image of the Yukon object was distributed internally on February 14, 2023. The next morning, it was declared unclassified and approved for public release. So why are we only seeing it a year and a half later? In a partially redacted email thread, additional footage is mentioned. Canada's former top soldier and previous chief of the defense staff, General Wayne Eyre, even suggested using the declassified picture in an upcoming social media post. Quote, attached is an image approved to be released. A February 15th, 2023 email to Canadian military leader says, quote, we are looking at getting a better one to send to you. Well, yeah, that would be nice, but I guess that never emerged. Yeah, who knows? It's probably, maybe it's no big deal, but there were some weird peculiarities about those shoot downs and the objects that were allegedly shot down. Everything feels alleged to me at this point. So, meanwhile, over at Scientific American, we've got this article by Luis Caetano Simari. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, even though I've seen him numerous times on YouTube videos. And Vicente Juan Ballester Olmos, who's a very famous older ufologist. And I'm kind of intrigued at the fact that this is an opinion piece, and it does say so at the very end. But this is on scientificamerican.com, is published on September 26. What really happened at the Pentagon's once hidden UFO office? And it really, there's nothing particularly new here, but for folks who really aren't sure about what they've been hearing, who are new to the UFO scene, this might actually be a helpful article, even though it's rather skeptical. Juan Ballester Olmos is typically always been a very skeptical guy, but he's been at this for a long time, so clearly he has a really intense interest in the UFO phenomenon. But to my take, it doesn't take the Arrow report to task enough. And strangely, really the bulk of this report, there's a lot of hyperlinks to resources that is very helpful, but it also seems to be more just promoting two papers that you can download from academia.edu, that being this one, The Reliability of UFO Witness Testimony by Ballister Olmos and Richard Hayden, which features a wide array of researchers. This was published last year and has just tons and tons of essays by different writers that range from Chapter 1, Memory Games, a false recall episode by Ballister Olmos, to Chapter 7, The Real or IL, UFO Contactee and the Last Prophet by Claude Mauge, a French or Belgian researcher, and many, many, many other articles. One by Nigel Watson, Chapter 16, on the credibility of the Barney and Betty Hill abduction case, and just a lot of interesting stuff here, including here's one by shamanism expert Dr. Stanley Krippner, Aliens, UFOs, and Personal Schemas, Chapter 6 of the second section. Lots of interesting stuff here. I have heard people criticize this particular paper as being hardcore anti-witness testimony, and certainly, that is the way a lot of critics go after everything that's not backed up by military hardware observations like radar or electromagnetic data. But the other paper that's linked to in that that Scientific American article is this one on the OSAP ATIP confusion. And this came out just a couple of months ago, and again is by Ballister Olmos, and again this Luis Caetano, the author of that opinion piece for the Scientific American. And it does do a really good job of giving an overview and even a timeline of the history of modern UFO research by the government, especially the OSAP and ATIP program. And again, the confusion over what they really were doing, and this weird situation with Lou Elizondo saying he was the head of it, but then there being disagreement about that. So those are all free to download from academia.edu, and like I say, are linked to multiple times in this Scientific American article, What Really Happened at the Pentagon's Once Hidden UFO Office. All right. And I became aware of this interesting collection of UFO hotspot data over at betus.com. UFO hotspots, top UFO hotspots in the U.S., where to watch the skies. Interestingly enough, so it rates the top states for numbers of UFO sightings. It's all drawn from the National UFO Reporting Center. Of course, you can go to newfork.org and dive into this data yourself. Here is just the cases for Texas from the last several months. But this UFO hotspots betus.com survey compiled all that and came up with you're most likely to see a UFO if you look in Arizona in July at 9 p.m. But you can also, of course, you can plug in your own state if you want to see where we rank. Here's Texas. We're number 15. So we didn't make the top 5. We're top 10 with 164 sightings from the Newfork database. I'm not sure what the time parameter was on this, but interestingly enough, Austin is the prime city. So I'm not sure. I don't hear that many sightings reports coming from here, but then maybe we're just not hearing about them. Now, I see what I did here. Okay. Well, there is this news of a Texas sighting allegedly over Amarillo. Not really that impressed by this. This is from ovnilogia.com.br. I believe it's a Portuguese site. This is the Chrome translation to English. Silent boomerang UFO filmed over Texas. The record, a rare one in the UFO world, was made in August this year in the state of Texas. In it, we can see an impressive boomerang-shaped UFO flying silently through the sky. I believe this is the only known first source for this video footage being reported on. Now you can find more reporting over at Anomaly.com by Jake Carter. And it's basically just regurgitating the same limited data. Somebody named L. Miller saw this near Amarillo, Texas. I believe, yes, here. It was in a forested area on a deer stakeout and had a night vision device with him. This allowed him to capture more than just a distant light. He filmed a distinct, mysterious craft. And here is the box cropped video footage of this. But this is just so much trash UFO footage out there. Even in the expanded version, you can see no nearby landmarks, nothing to give you a sense of where this is, nothing to compare size or distance. It's so as nicely defined as the craft appears in the video, it's practically useless unless hopefully there is a chain of custody, a provenance, and somebody is actually speaking to the original videographer. But so far, I'm not aware of that emerging any details about this. But as many have noted, it looks remarkably like the drawings of what people saw over Arizona way back in the mid to late 1990s. The famous Phoenix Light boomerang and descriptions of being connected to the TR-3B, of course, abound. Well, moving right along, I'm really excited. You can watch the trailer for this. The Manhattan Alien Abductions is coming out at the end of the month on Netflix. And this is the story of the Linda Cortile case, or AKA Napolitano. Actually, I should say Napolitano, AKA Linda Cortile. I remember when I first heard about this case here in an Austin MUFON meeting, and I've got the video somewhere that I need to dig out and digitize. It's on the old tapes. But the then head of MUFON, the International Mutual UFO Network, Walt Andrus, introduced our speakers at that little mini conference where we had some abductees and UFO researchers, the coins, alongside some crop circle researchers, Busty Taylor and I forget the other fellow's name. But the introduction to this conference, Walt Andrus started talking about this case and how it was an amazing, going to just blow the lid off of it, of the phenomenon and the cover up. And he hinted that it involved a high level person from the United Nations. Well, that turned out to allegedly be, now I'm going to forget the name. Former Secretary General of the United Nations, Javier Perez de Cuellar, supposedly was a witness to Linda Cortile being floated out of her Manhattan apartment and up into a UFO that then flew down into the river. And supposedly Javier Perez de Cuellar and his two security guards were terrified that this woman had drowned. And there were supposedly multiple witnesses on the bridge and nearby. But what's really exciting about this documentary series, I think it's a series. Yes, docuseries. Woman claims to have been abducted from her bedroom in Manhattan. This docuseries explores whether it was an elaborate hoax or proof of alien life. Well, it features also the work of Carol Rainey, who sadly passed away just over a year ago. Carol Rainey was one of Bud Hopkins, the alien abduction researcher, one of his wives. He, I believe, was married 3 times, and when he passed, he was in a relationship with Leslie Kean, who, of course, has gone on to seemingly great heights, reporting with the New York Times about the OSAP ATIP Pentagon UFO program. Well, Carol Rainey, you can find out more about her at her website, Carol Rainey, Rainey, Carol Carol. She was a documentarian and videographer and was recording a lot of material. And apparently she features heavily in this docuseries that looks, at least from the trailer, like it's going to give an interesting, possibly balanced, skeptical approach to this story. But Carol Rainey spoke out about her disappointment with her ex-husband's efforts in the realm of being an abduction researcher. And she started talking publicly about this. And like I said, you can go to her website, carolrainey.com, and you can find videos, clips, links to her videos, and so forth. And there's some of those clips that are maybe in the documentary, the docuseries on Netflix, are also available on her YouTube channel, all of which we have linked, I believe, over at anomalyarchives.org's webpage for her. So yeah, the New York Times reported when Bud Hopkins passed that Mr. Hopkins's 3 marriages to Joan Byer, April Kingsley, and Carol Rainey ended in divorce. Besides his daughter Grace from his marriage to Ms. Kingsley, he is survived by his companion Leslie Kane, a sister Eleanor Whiteley, and a grandchild. And of course, if you're really interested in Bud Hopkins, you can read his memoir, Art, Life, and UFOs, which was published in 2009 by Anomalous Books. But if you really want to read some of her critical writing on the subject, I'll have links to this online PDF of Paratopia Volume 1, Issue 1, which is really a indictment of the abduction research community. There's articles by Emma Woods, who is one of the women who spoke out against abduction researchers, dangerous games, experiencers as human research subjects in ufology. Debbie Jordan Cobble wrote an open letter to anyone who will listen. Now, Debbie Cobble was one of the main witnesses, experiencers, abductees that Bud Hopkins wrote about in his first two abduction books. And of course, the big cover story here, The Priests of High Strangeness, Co-Creation of the Alien Abduction Phenomenon by Carol Rainey. Now, in this sense, she's not using co-creation in the sense that our good friend Greg Bishop talks about, and the others have explored the idea that that our minds and whatever intelligence we're interacting with in the true UFO phenomena are co-creating the experience that is had. She, I believe, is talking about how so much of what's being created in terms of the mythology is the result of the researchers. And yeah, this whole issue is about 40 pages and is available for free online. And there's other versions of it around online as well, and we'll give the links to that. This is the article here with some of those pictures. And it really, not to criticize the deceased, and I know many people love Bud Hopkins, and he undoubtedly was a very nice man, but apparently was not the best investigative reporter. But then he was working with people just trying to help them come to terms with these traumatic experiences. But that is the kind of the problem with the nature of being an abduction researcher or an investigator versus somebody doing therapy for people who've had these kinds of trauma. But so hopefully that Netflix-ish docuseries will be pretty good. Just in looking for stuff about Carol Rainey, or actually looking for stuff about Javier Perez de Cuellar, I found this old reference to a book review by somebody, John Terode, over at the independent.co.uk from way back in March of 1994. And it just mentions here in the first paragraph, in the small hours of November 30th, 1989, Javier Perez de Cuellar, then Secretary General of the United Nations, was being chauffeured through the Lower East Side of New York when he was abducted by aliens and taken to their spaceship. By now, pajama-clad, he was subjected to an intimate physical examination before being returned to the folk whence he came. This bizarre rumor has filtered up from fruitcake land to the semi-serious press. As a result, poor old Perez de Cuellar is harassed by fax, by phone, and by persistent reporters. Yeah, not a very friendly review of the book that I really like, even though a lot of people don't consider this book to be a very friendly treatment of the abduction scene, but I found it to be a very powerful book, one of 3 by Jim Schnabel on paranormal topics. It's called Dark White: Aliens, Abductions, and the UFO Obsession. He also wrote a book on crop circles called Round and Circles, and he also did really one of the first books to expose the military psychic remote viewing program. And he even tried, he became a circle maker for the crop circle book, and he became a remote viewer for the remote viewing book. I don't think he became an abductee for Dark White, but it's been a while since I read it. Well, there's a fun event coming up that you might want to check out. It's the first ever Un-Halloween celebration at the new Nature's Treasures in North Austin. That's coming up Saturday, November 9th, being put on by our good friend Saul Ravencraft. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. And moving right along here, you know, we talked recently about Paul Devereaux, not Paul Devereaux, Rupert Sheldrake, and how TED Talks had deleted his talk years ago, which was perfectly in line with his experience of his ideas from years earlier when a major scientific publication had described his book on morphogenetic fields, morphic resonance, as being a book worth burning. Well, I became aware of this TED Talk by Stephen Berkeley. It's a TEDx from Woodinville, but it's unlisted. You can see right down here, it says unlisted. I'm on the newsletter email list for Stephen Berkeley's efforts. Several months back, I talked about a documentary that was produced many years ago, and that also features Jeff Kripal, that's all about the grief and the afterlife and communicating with the dead. And as the title here suggests, Talking to the Dead is doctor recommended. It's only about 9.5 minutes long. It's a fun little video. I think it's pretty touching, and I do think it's the kind of thing, since we all deal with grief and the loss of loved ones and family and friends, could be helpful to some of you out there. And it's, if you feel so compelled, maybe you'll reach out to TED Talks and say, hey, why don't you list this video? So yes, there's this note from TED. Please do not look to this talk for mental health advice and seek professional help if you are struggling. This talk only represents the speaker's personal views and understandings of grief counseling and after-death communication. Several claims in this talk lack legitimate scientific support. Now, the thing is, he references in this talk some of the research done at UNT, the University of North Texas, and which is a part of the documentary that he produced, and which I think is valuable research. So maybe you'll find that interesting. And talk about going off the rails. So over at semaphore.com, InfoWars' Victims and Enemies, consider buying it. This is September 30th. And for those if you don't know or haven't been following the saga of Alex Jones and his InfoWars empire, of course, he's been ordered to pay $1.5 billion to the victims' families of the 2012 shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary for their being harassed by Jones's fans, and that were being stoked by his claims of this event being staged or not even real. Whatever you think of all that, it's quite ironic that it looks like his InfoWars media empire could end up in the hands of many of the forces that he sees as his enemies. In fact, I believe the left-leaning, Angelo Carusone, the president of the left-leaning conservative media watchdog group Media Matters for America, confirmed that the organization would explore bidding on InfoWars at auction. Quote, "We are diligently considering this acquisition," he said in an email. Carusone said that in addition to taking control of the brand's eponymous digital channels, he was equally interested in what InfoWars hasn't published and wondered if the archives could contain some interesting revelations. Yeah, of course, so much, the majority of the InfoWars material has been deleted from YouTube, of course. There is still some stuff up around here and there. But yeah, interesting development here. Another says, other left-leaning media players closer to home also see an opportunity. Jeff Rotkoff, the publisher of the new Texas-focused digital publication The Barbed Wire, told Semaphore that although he isn't currently in a position to buy the Austin-based company outright, he was having conversations with people in his network and was seriously considering how the site could partner with other interests or publishers to get in on the bidding. In a brief telephone conversation this week, Rotkoff, who is also the Texas State Director of Democratic-aligned Super PAC Forward Majority, said that he remembers being baffled while watching Jones on local television decades ago when he was in college in Texas. And I think the last thing I have for tonight is from I thought I'd covered this, but I don't believe I had. There are several news outlets that have reported on this. I have not seen any follow-up, but this one at Newsweek.com, Donald Trump rally attendees report mystery eye problems. And this immediately made me think of the claims of Havana syndrome and the idea of attacks with electromagnetic weapons. The article says attendees to Donald Trump's rally in Arizona have reported sustaining mystery eye problems from the event. The rally in Tucson, Arizona on September 12th, which drew over 2,000 people in 100-degree heat, resulted in a number of Trump supporters going to the emergency room. The Trump campaign has said it is investigating the event. Secret Service told News Force Tucson that it was unaware of anything out of the ordinary occurring at the rally. It added that it was unaware of any planned threat to Trump in Arizona. It's so that apparently they had attendees get up on stage on, I guess, either side of him. And the rally was set up so that 48 exclusive attendees could stand on the stage with Trump. They were then split into two groups, one on stage right and one on stage left. The group on stage left reported no symptoms or anything suspicious. But according to a report from News 4 Tucson, several people in the group on stage right left the rally with excruciating pain in their eyes. Well, strange. But these are very weird days we are in, indeed. Well, as mentioned, coming up this month for our Patreon Anomaly Academy Cadet tier, we've got Greg Bishop on Wednesday, October 23rd, giving a lecture on Can Hard Data and Materialism Solve the UFO Enigma? I'm very much looking forward to that. And you can find out more by going to patreon.com/Anomaly Archives. Actually, I haven't posted anything there yet about that. That'll be posted in a few days. And well, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate you tuning in or listening to the rebroadcast. That's going to be it for tonight. Take care. Good night.